Yeah, Barbara Devinney has been a member here for 6 years, but she is not new to UU's. She's been in 3 other congregations before this, and she went along in life. And she's done a lot of volunteer responsibilities since she's been here. But one that I want to mention, tell those people they can come on if they want. Did they go away? One volunteer responsibility was referred to in today's sermon because Barbara helped in drafting our Covenant of Right Relations, which has been approved by the board. And I think now that COVID's over, I'm hoping they're going to start communicating more about it to the rest of.
It was approved by the congregation.
It was approved by the congregation as well. Okay. We probably still need some reminder about it. I don't think we've thought much about it. But anyhow, she helped him and was on the committee that drafted that. And Barbara's done volunteer work in relation to the seniors in our congregation, for example, Senior Connections, which I think is now called something different. But anyhow, she's been quite an active member. So Barbara, I'm going to turn things over to you because they want to hear from you.
I am honored that you're all here in this room and watching on Zoom, so thank you. So my pronouns are she and her, and I like Barbara, not Barb. And I like Ms. Devinney rather than Miss or Mrs., which was something that we fought hard and long for back in the 70s. For those of you in the room, you'll know that I've come with a gift for you. It is a prose poem. And we're going to put in the chat for you the reference to it so you can find it online. And I'm just going to read the first stanza. It's The Invitation by Uriah Mountain Dreamer. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. So I think it's really important that we get to know each other. And I like to visit other union churches when I travel. And I'm always interested in the service and the presenters. But the coffee hour means nothing to me because I don't know anybody. And I just think it's really important that we open ourselves up to getting to meet new people. I've also attended 3 recent memorial services, actually yesterday, the weekend before, and the weekend before that. And each time I was amazed at how much I learned about the person that I never knew while they were living. So let's not wait. So I'm a native Californian. I grew up in Sacramento, lived there a major part of my life. My father was 20 and my mother was 19 when they married. My father, it was during World War II, and my father was out to sea in the Navy when I was born. And 15 months later, my brother was born. My father had no use for religion, and he didn't talk about it. My mother was nominally Protestant. She thought it was important that we would dress up and go to church on Easter. She taught me that very scary bedtime prayer about if I should die before I wake. Lived in a neighborhood that had a Catholic church and nearby a Catholic school, and in our backyard was the Catholic hospital, and we would have to walk past the Catholic churches to get to the Protestant church. So that started some religious questions in my mind. At age 7, I learned that I was born into religious conflict. I asked my grandmother, why is it that we live in Sacramento? My brother's birth certificate says he was born in Sacramento, but mine says I was born in San Diego. And my grandmother said, well, when your mother was pregnant, my husband, who she was then divorced from, decided to become a Christian Scientist. And he decided that I should be born at home and not in a hospital. And my mother's older sister had become a nurse about that time. So there was a little bit of conflict going on in the family, and my grandmother somehow scrape together enough money to put my mother on a train to San Jose, where my mother stayed with some friends until I was born. So that again raised some questions about what is this religion thing all about? And growing up for me was a combination of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's taken me a lifetime to understand it. My parents were very cynical, very controlling. There was lots of criticism, lots of spankings, lots of shaming, and a lot of body shaming. One day when I was about 9, I was singing in the shower, and when I got out, my father said, "When you grow up, I hope you'll be on the radio so I could reach over and turn you off." So there was a bit squashing of spirit, shall we say. And I was walking on eggshells all the time. Things that saved me were dance lessons, teachers and school friends, brownies and Girl Scouts, and music. Also, I found hope in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. At age 11, a friend from high school, a very popular school friend, invited me to participate in confirmation classes at the Congregational Church. And I went through the program, but that raised a lot more questions. And I really decided that I'm pretty much an ashes to ashes kind of person. I don't really have a belief in salvation and my future in heaven. At a late age 11, going on 12, my mother had something of a nervous breakdown. And my father became very physically inappropriate with me. And he made a lot of physical threats if I told anybody. So it was a very scary time for me. And I finally got up enough courage to tell my mother, but she didn't believe me. So I became the bad person in the family who ruined the family relations. I was still involved with the Congregational Church. I remember riding my bicycle to the church one Saturday and sitting in the back of the pew and nobody was there, and hoping, praying that the minister would show up, somebody who might ask me what's going on with your life. And nobody came, and I didn't hear God speak to me. And I think it was around that time when I decided that God helps those who help themselves. When I was about 15, I read Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, and I wanted to become a social worker and work to fight poverty and help improve conditions for people. In high school, I had a boyfriend who described himself as an atheist, but I thought that was too bold and non-conforming for me, but it planted a question in my mind. And I had a Catholic boyfriend, and I wondered how I could be accepted into his family. And I wondered whether I could become a Catholic. But as time went on, I realized he was really more interested in his male friend than in me. And around the same time, our house was imbued with my father's agreement with the racist rhetoric of George Wallace, who was saying segregation now, segregation forever. And I knew that wasn't me. And I really wanted to go away to college. I left home at 19. Well, first of all, I really wanted to go away to college. All my friends were going away to college. And my parents made it clear to me if I wanted to go, I would have to do it on my own. I left home at 19 following my last beating. I went through several years of feeling incredibly lonely, and music on the radio is what saved me from thoughts of suicide. And then my 20s were a tremendous growth period from 1963 to 72. It took me 11 years to get my college degree. I was working mostly full-time and then part-time while working. And during this time, the Vietnam War was raging. I became aware that the Unitarians were very anti-war, doing a lot of demonstrations, but I didn't have time for church. In 1968, Martin Luther King was killed, followed shortly after that by John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and the civil rights movement was taking off. We had the counterculture revolution, the Green Revolution, the hippie culture. Oh, I really wanted to be a hippie. I really resonated with that, but I did not figure how I could support myself doing that. It was a blessing that one of my first jobs was as a secretary in the Department of Mental Hygiene, which is now known as mental health. And then I worked for the Governor's Study Commission on mental retardation, and I tracked legislation. And on my weekends or on my vacations, I would visit state hospitals because I had a curiosity about what was really going on there. When I was 24, I got married, and neither one of us was religious or political. And then I was taking a biology class at community college, and I read The Population Bomb by Paul Irwin. And I was, my mid-20s, it was time, I was late in having a baby. I wanted to have a baby, and I wanted to finish college. How can I do these things? And I also didn't want to bring more children into the world with all its ills. My grandmother had Parkinson's disease, and I was concerned about what genetic phenomena that could be passed down. But my husband made it clear that if we were going to have children, it would be the regular way. After I got pregnant, we learned that my brother had Hodgkin's disease, and he made a very drastic decline in 6 months. In fact, he died on the night my daughter was born. So it was a very tragic time. My husband had a college degree, but he didn't think I needed one. So he knew that I had this goal, that I'd been going to college for 6 years by the time we got married. His idea was that I could get a part-time job as a bank teller down the street, and we could have more children and invest in real estate. So at the same time, there was the women's lib movement, and we also had political differences. I was voting for Shirley Chisholm in 1972, and he was in the other camp, let's say. Everything I said, he put down as, oh, that's just women's lib. So to make a long story short, I had to make a very serious decision there, and I then became a single parent since my daughter was 4 years old. And I was working and going to school, and I had no time for church. And 1972 to 1977, when I was 30 and 33, those were pivotal years again. In 1972, I finally graduated from State College. I was working in the state capitol as a secretary to Senator Mervyn Dymally. He was African American, and he was also chair of the Senate Elections and Reapportionment Committee. And I was waiting to be accepted to law school. And I was really fortunate to be accepted into University of California at Davis, which is 20 miles from Sacramento. And it was called the Martin Luther King Hall School of Law. And 42% of my classmates, entering classmates, were 45% were women, 42% were from different ethnic minorities, and there were a number of us who were single mothers. And we learned as much from each other as we did from the school books. At that same time, I got introduced to some counselors at the university and linked up with one of them. I was really struggling with the biblical commandment to honor thy father and mother. And it was a counselor when I was 30 who helped me to realize stepping away from that relationship was the most sensible thing that I could do for myself and for my daughter. In my first year of law school, the Watergate hearings were going on. So we'd go to class and learn all of this legal terminology, and then we'd go home and turn on the TV and hear more legal terminology. And so I'm pretty stuck on what's happening with political events and legal actions. It was also a time when we were fighting to use the term Ms. for women to wear pantsuits, for women to have equal pay. The Equal Rights Amendment has just been approved by the Senate and sent to the states for ratification, which has yet to be ratified. We were all irked by the reasonable man standard that was in the textbooks. And also, just without the legal aspects, any book you would read at the time would refer to any person as he. I think we've seen a lot of change over the years in at least using she or he as kind of an alternate phrase. So we can still wear pantsuits so far. After 6 weeks in that first year of law school, many of the students decided that they just couldn't hack it anymore. It was too much of a time pressure, pulling them away from their families, and they left. And I was determined to continue. It was hard. It was a battle. At the end of the first year, one of the students committed suicide. There was such tremendous pressure to succeed, to have your family's approval, to find a way to make money and succeed and move ahead. But at some point, you have to find a balance between life and this artificial reality of fame and success. In my second year, I was blessed to do an internship in the public defender's office. And I was assigned to juvenile court and represented juveniles in the court setting. And I really loved that and would love to have had a career in that. In my third year, I started looking for a job and I started attending some of the social programs at the Unitarian Church in Davis. And then I took the bar exam and I did not pass. I came this close. Now, it takes a lot of money to take a bar review course, a lot of intensive study, and then you take the test, which costs some money, and you sometimes have to drive to distant area to take it. And then you have to wait 5 months to get the results. So here I am, a single parent with needing a job to support the family and trying to study for that as well. I did it the second time, the bar exam. And again, I missed.
California bar is the hardest one. You could live somewhere else.
I was so hopeful when I applied that I neglected to read the prospects, the percentages of those who do not pass. And I did not add in that element of realism. But I do not regret the experience. It was life-changing in so many ways. So then what can you do in terms of a job without a bar license? So I've been blessed to have a number of bosses with Hispanic and African-American backgrounds and to work with organizations supporting people of color. None of them, however, paid anywhere near what I was hoping to make. I got to work in a migrant education office, and most of the staff there were Hispanic. I had a period where I developed a paralegal training program for a small private school. And then I started working for the Mental Health Association. First, a part-time job, I did advocacy work, and then I was also the coordinator of the bereavement outreach program. And we met at the Unitarian Church once a month to provide an educational program to the community. And after a couple of years, I became the executive director of the Mental Health Association in Sacramento. And we had 260 volunteers who were doing educational programs and support programs and visiting people in intensive psychiatric units. We also participated with the state's mental health program called Friends Can Be Good Medicine. And those words have lived with me since then. I also wanted to use more of my legal background and I enjoyed writing, so I accepted a job with the National Judicial College in Reno, Nevada. My title was Development Officer, which meant I got to write a lot of grant proposals. And then I was the Public Information Officer. And after being there for 5 years, I took a job in Los Angeles with a Jewish-sponsored legal aid agency where I was the grants administrator. And I was 45, my daughter had gone off to college, and I was very lonely, and I decided maybe I could become a foster parent and do this along with my job. I had experience being a single mom. I knew how to find daycare. And And I was also open to maybe adopting. And I thought what would be really appropriate for me would be like a 12-year-old girl. That would be, I had experience with that. Then I started thinking, well, how am I going to fill out these application forms? What am I going to put on one of the first questions? What is my religion? So I had started going to singles dances at the Unitarian Church. And I saw in the lobby a questionnaire, a brochure asking, can an atheist be a Unitarian? And you have to read through a little mumbo jumbo, but yes. And so I with trepidation, I signed up to become a member while I was waiting. And it took a lot longer a process than I had been led to believe in the beginning. So it was a couple of years then that I had an opportunity to do some volunteer work with the church. So I became a discussion facilitator for the singles dances. We would go in and have wine and cheese, and then we would have a discussion topic announced for the evening. And we would go up into the classrooms and break out into smaller groups and have a facilitator and talk and get to know each other. And then we would go downstairs and let our hair down and dance. I also took Tai Chi lessons from the minister's wife, and I facilitated a women's support group. And I observed that it was really an ideal place for families where parents come from different religions. I really enjoy the acceptance of many cultures, the blending of science, education, religion, spirituality, justice work, and the opportunity to learn new things. So I'm waiting and waiting for this foster child to show up, and the social worker calls me up one day and she says, I know you wanted a 12-year-old girl, and I know, but you said you'd be open to a child from mixed race. I have a 5.5-year-old boy who really needs a family. And he does have some emotional and behavioral challenges. Oh, so I think, well, I've worked with the Mental Health Association, you know, don't all children in foster care have emotional problems, you know. I waited so long. So I accepted him. And I was so grateful that I belonged to the Unitarian Church because they just took him under their wing right away. The second or third week he was with me, he fell and broke his leg on the playground. So he was in crutches. And a week after that, he was up on the dais at the Unitarian Church with a sunbeam around his head in the skit that they were doing. And that just really touched me. And two of the friends there have become like an aunt and an uncle to my son. What I didn't know I would be getting into was a 3-year protracted custody battle. When he came to live with me, his mother was in jail, his father was in prison. I was told they hadn't seen him for such a long time, and they were willing to let him go. And he came to understand and was thrilled that he would be able to live with me forever. And then someone in jail convinced his mother to try to get him back, and he was just torn. And I don't think he ever really recovered from that. So I've been involved with interim periods at UU churches, and I've always found them to be growth opportunities. In Santa Monica, the minister there had been there for 30 years. And he was a little bit dry and boring. And the next one who came, and then the interim minister, was a younger man. He was gay. He brought this new energy. And every place that I've been that had an interim minister or a new minister has always brought some new breath of fresh air, new perspective, and a way for us to get to know each other better as congregational members. One of the things I learned during one of those periods at the Santa Monica Church, that was the first place I took the Myers-Briggs type indicator and learned about different personality types and leadership roles and what that means when you're working in groups, about who has what kinds of skills, and that we're not all wired the same way. Now, I moved to Fresno because I never knew when I might open the door and somebody from my son's family would try to snatch him away. And so I got permission just before the adoption was finalized to move to Fresno, and I had a job there as the grants director for the largest community action agency in the country. My bosses were Chicano and African American. We had 22 different programs, including Head Start, programs for seniors, Southeast Asian refugees, and African American HIV prevention, and on and on. My son had been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and he was in a special school program for pre-adolescents with emotional and behavioral challenges. Before the adoption was finalized, I had to have surgery for an ovarian cyst. And I had just left a 5-year job with sick leave I had never used. And now I'm in a new job with no sick leave and maybe the threat of cancer hanging over my head and wondering what will happen to my child. Will he have to go back into the system, which would kill him, I'm sure. So you will not believe this, but what they found in surgery was called a dermoid, which is like a hairball. Bits of hair, a tooth, debris from the body because it nowhere else to go. So I was able to finalize the adoption in 1993 when he was just about 9 years old. And a year or so after that, Fred, who I had danced with a lot at the singles dance in Santa Monica, wanted to come and live with us and be like a dad to my son. And that was great because he was a maintenance mechanic and they did all these guy things together. We used to like watch Tool Time on TV. Things I never would have done as the mother of a mom. So the UU church meant a lot to my son. When we moved to Fresno, I really wanted to be close to the church so we could be connected with him. He loved the potlucks. I love potlucks. They had a yurt for the teens to meet in. It was out in the yard and a great big round tent and it had throw cushions on the floor and it was their hangout space. And it really meant a lot to them. And he was in the Our Whole Lives program. And 2 of the girls there asked him to proms on 2 consecutive weekends. So he got to wear the same tux twice. Then, despite the Our Whole Lives program, which is lifelong human sexuality, he and his girlfriend had an oops baby.
Oops.
Yeah, oops. So he was barely 18 and she was barely 17. And they didn't get married until she was 8 months pregnant. And then he joined the Army. And they never should have accepted him with his medical background, but they never asked the mom about that. Then they sent him to Iraq, where he had a concussion. And I'll say a little bit more about him later, but I was involved with the UU Church in Fresno for over 16 years. And what I really appreciate about UU churches is the opportunity for social interaction and to do volunteer work that's different from what you have to do in your day job. You have a specific role. This is who you are. This is what you do. Don't stray out of your lane. You need to do so many more things, to take turns doing things. I like that women are fully integrated into the leadership of the UU Church. Nobody has to ask permission. Also, some of my dearest friends I still have from the various UU churches I've been involved with. Potlucks, of course, and singing as part of the congregation. And what I really appreciate is my voice being drowned out by all of you wonderful singers. And I've got that joy back that I had in the shower back then. And songs that have supported me spiritually and emotionally are Peace Like a River, Come Sing a Song With Me, and Let It Be a Dance We Do. And at the Santa Monica Church, the writer of that, creator of that song, Rick Masters, was a member there. So I got to hear him sing that. And we had an interim minister in Fresno who started a worship associate training program. And she really encouraged a number of us to be involved in that. So I went with some trepidation, and I really told her I had questions about the word worship. And she said, that simply means that which has worth. Now that I could get my head around.
Barbara,
Yes,
we're gonna have to,
okay,
I need you to wrap it up soon.
okay. So my partner and I, Fred, retired to McCormick, South Carolina in 2006, which was 14 years ago. And at the time, both of my kids were living on the East Coast with every promise to go on around the world. And unfortunately, after we moved, as we were moving, Fred's prostate cancer came back, and he died 6 months after we arrived. So then I had to ask myself the Mary Oliver question: what shall I do with my one wild and precious life? So I joined the board of the John Villa House School, which was in McCormick. It was a 200-year institution serving children. It had become a school for disadvantaged children. And in recent years, they had 70% of the population was African American, and they had their first African American president. And that really rankled the funders in the legislature, and they were trying to defund that school. So I spent 5 years on the board, and I'm happy to say that that school has been recommissioned as an agricultural school and is still standing. I think we'll just end there and see. Oh, I have one thing I want to say. I do want to thank Carol for leading the Credo programs, the 3.5 years. Carol. And I just think it's really important that we all make an effort to get to know each other better and let it be a dance.
It's now time that usually everything is forward. So if any of you need to leave right now, that is fine. If you'd like to hang around a little bit longer and ask a question or listen to question and answer, please do. So do whatever you want to do.
I'm hanging around.
All right. This was very fascinating, Colorado. Thank you so much, Abby. Let's answer questions.
Not yet.
Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for such a wonderful explanation, and you've had such wonderful learning experiences in spite of the tremendous difficulties and the problems. It's tremendous. Thank you so much.
Well, you're my greatest fan.
So far, we'll see, but this is, I love this. This is one of the best things I've ever read. It's marvelous.
Sure.
Thank you.
What, tell us about your
Okay.
children now, they're all grown.
My daughter is 53. She lives in Oakland, California. He was married, happily married for 10 years, and then her husband decided to go off to a foreign country without her. And that broke her heart, and she was very distraught for a couple of years. And now she is in a new happy relationship with a woman who is Chinese and 15 years younger than she. She has never been able to tell her father about that relationship because she knew that he would not accept that.
How's your son?
Sadly, my son died suddenly last December. And
How?
well, that's been hard for me to talk about. It's why I didn't want anybody in the church to know at the time. Nobody knew him, but it was by suicide. And so he had a very troubled life. When he got back from Iraq, he got involved with drugs. He had 3 marriages. I have a granddaughter who lives in Texas with what was his first wife. And he was a very generous person. I'm very grateful for the last year that we had together. It was very meaningful. He told me how grateful he was. It just wasn't enough, And I've had this feeling that, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty back together. And so, I really care for kids who are in foster care, shuttled from place to place and have to go through situations with drugs and crime and the push and the pull and all. Anybody else?
Barbara, I just want to echo the gentleman's appreciation for your sharing what you shared. I know we met and talked a while ago. I can't remember if it was a stewardship conversation or not, but I learned even more and appreciate even more. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for being really.
You've been so vulnerable. It's not often that people are that. So thank you.
And not everybody can do it. So as you're thinking about people who might want to do the Credo, you could do it sitting down. We could do a question and answer thing. You could do a PowerPoint presentation. You don't have to be as deep as this, but do let us get to know you better. Thank you so much.
Thank you.